Hey fearsome friends, I hope you all had as wonderful a Christmas as you could in these tough times. Today's stories are all rather short, but creepy all the same. I hope you enjoy it. So sit back, get cozy, comfy and warm, and remember, keep being creepy. This happened about a year ago. It took place in my neighbourhood and the grassland meadows next to it. In summer 2019, me and 5 other friends were out ding-dong ditching in my neighbourhood. We decided to do it to a house that's on the edge of the neighbourhood bordering the grassland. A little while into the grassland, there's an abandoned house that burnt down a few years ago, and unfortunately 2 people died in that fire. We figured that it would be a good hiding spot if angry people would catch us out. Everyone agreed that I had to ding-dong ditch the house on the edge of the neighbourhood, so I rang the doorbell and hid. And after they'd gone back inside, I did it again. Except this time the people were waiting for us at the door. Just before I pressed the bell, they opened the door and ran after us. They got so mad that we were petrified and all ran in different directions. Me and a friend ran into the grasslands for about 3 minutes and realised we were lost. It was almost the end of summer and it was now 11-12 o'clock at night, so it was already dark out. In the tall grass we couldn't see the neighbourhood because the house we ding-dong ditched wasn't connected to it, but it is part of it. We were debating on where to go, so we just walked in a random direction that led us to a little stream. It goes through the grassland, and we weren't sure if we had to follow the stream or follow the opposite way of the stream, so we chose to go with it. This led us to the burnt-down house, which we didn't know at first because it was so dark. But right after we'd recognised the house, we knew there was a road behind it, so we walked towards there. My friend started running towards it, but I was tired, so I just walked. But then when he was right by the house, he suddenly stopped, because he claimed that he could hear footsteps. At first I didn't believe it, but then I heard it too. At the same time, I started feeling like I was being watched, so we both started running faster towards the road. But when I looked back, I saw a woman standing in front of the house, staring right at where the front door was. I was about to tell my friend what I'd seen once we were in the middle of the road. There were no cars, but we heard more footsteps. Then we both turned to see a person standing in the middle of the driveway of the burned house. We were petrified, so much so that we started running towards where we knew some cars would be. I truly believe this was a ghost, but my friend thinks it was just some homeless people, which I think is impossible, because it was in the middle of nowhere. What do you guys think it was? I hesitated for a long time before deciding to share this story, because it's just so creepy and strange. It took place when I was about 5 years old, but strangely enough I still remember every detail so clearly. I'm 25 now. It was a September afternoon, and I had just started elementary school. I was playing alone in my room when I felt an urge to open my wardrobe closet. I don't know where this urge came from, as I rarely went there on my own as a child. As soon as I took hold of the door handle, it started turning violently on its own, and I felt something pushing on the other side. Instinctively, I put my whole body onto the door so that it wouldn't open, and I screamed for my dad to come. I could feel something pushing and banging on the other side of the door, and I was barely able to keep the closet shut. And the moment my dad arrived, everything stopped. He looked carefully in the closet and said everything was fine. He then told me to come to the kitchen to calm down, and I ate a lemon brioche with my brother. Now my brother was already sitting at the kitchen table when I arrived downstairs, so it couldn't have been him, and I don't have any other siblings. A few months after that, I remember the same thing happening just before I went out with my mum to a restaurant. After that though, it never happened again. I always thought it was just a bad dream. However, once it was all over, these 2 events never felt like a dream. It felt so real and I don't remember taking a nap or waking up at all. It just happened in the middle of the day, kind of out of the blue. Even today I don't feel good vibes in my old room, especially the closet. Has anyone experienced the same thing? I feel that maybe we are more connected to these things as a child. I remember around 12 years ago, when I was around 11 or 12, I stayed over at my grandmother's a lot to keep her company after my grandfather had passed away. I was laying in bed one night after I had just turned the TV off, and as I was going off to sleep, I heard a creaking noise outside my bedroom door. I just thought it was Grandma going to the bathroom, since she had to walk past my room to get there. But then I heard the handle being pulled down. Again, I just thought it was my grandma maybe coming in to say goodnight before bed. But as I looked towards the door, I saw a large, white hand grip the edge of the door and instantly knew it wasn't her. I was too terrified to say anything or do anything, so I just kept watching as the door slowly opened. Because of the window at the top of the stairs outside the room, there was just enough light from the streetlights outside coming through to see what it was. It was a tall, slightly transparent figure. It just stood in the doorway for what could have been seconds or minutes. I have no idea. I couldn't look away, and I refused to shut my eyes, even to blink. But of course I had to eventually, and once I had, the figure was gone. The door was still open as proof that it wasn't my imagination, and to this day I still don't know what it was. I told my friends about it, and they said it could have been my grandfather's ghost, but it was way too tall and skeletal looking to be my grandfather, in my opinion. I also felt a deep, sinister feeling from it that couldn't be further from the warm, loving person that my grandfather was. I've had a few odd experiences with things before that I could chalk up to my imagination or overreacting, but as they say, you have to see it to believe it. And after that day, I certainly now believe. Ever since, it's had me wondering what else could be out there. I should start off by saying that I'm 18, and I live with my parents and my dog. I have never really experienced paranormal things before until this year. As if this year could get any weirder. It did over the summer. To give you some context, when you enter my room, straight ahead is my desk. When I am at my desk, I am facing the wall, so my door is behind me. One night at around 2 a.m, I was at my desk FaceTiming with my best friend. She was on my iPad, propped up against the wall, so she could see me and everything behind me. We were talking, and I was looking at myself through the little window on the screen, when I noticed a black figure appear at my door, linger for a few seconds, and then shift to the right towards my bed and closet. I turned around thinking I was bugging out, because it was late and I hadn't been sleeping well. So I turned around, about to tell her what I'd seen, when she says, "What the hell was that?" I asked her what she'd seen before I told her what I'd seen, and she described the exact same thing. She saw the same black spirit figure in almost the shape of a person, but not really, and then saw it shift to the right. At this point I knew I wasn't bugging and started to freak out. This was just the first time something weird happened. The second time I didn't see it, but I felt it and heard it. I was once again at my desk playing Among Us with my friends. I was on Discord, so I had my headphones on, and it was around midnight. My parents had already gone to bed, along with my dog who sleeps in their room, when I could hear footsteps and the sound of what I thought was nails scratching at my doors and walls. I didn't think much of it, because I thought maybe my dog had gotten out of my parents' room and figured my mum would come to get him soon. It stopped for a while, and then it resumed about 45 minutes later. It was getting louder, and the scratching was more persistent, so I took off my headphones and listened carefully to what was clearly footsteps in my hallway. I opened my door and nothing was there. I could now hear the scratching in the dining room, so I went there, but nothing. I checked my parents' room and their door was completely closed, and everyone, including my dog, was knocked out. I asked in the morning if any of them had gotten up around that time, or if my dog had woken up, and they said no. After that, I saw the figure, or spirit, I don't know what to call it, lingering in my room a few more times. It was usually fast and from the corner of my room. One time I saw it in the living room, shifting to the side, and then it disappeared. Normally it's at the end of my bed or next to it, but one day it got really close. I was laying down on my side and was on my phone, facing the same closet it had initially shifted when I first saw it. As I was scrolling through Instagram, I saw 3 fingers slowly grab at my phone from the top of it, where the camera is, like one finger closed down and then the next and the next. The weird thing is, though, is that I wasn't scared. Like each time I have had an experience with this spirit, I don't feel scared. I moved and it dashed away. That was about 3 weeks ago, and I haven't seen it since. This is all spanned from July 2020, right now into December. I hope I've explained this well enough for you guys to get the idea of what I've been experiencing. If anyone has any advice or has experienced something similar, let me know. I have lived here my whole life, but no one has died here before, as we are one of the first people to live here. It's an apartment in New York City, and I've asked my mom about cleansing and saging my room, but she's said no over and over again. I am the only one that has experienced this in my house. So a bit of backstory. I'm 24 and was between 9 and 10 years old when this happened. It was during the summer months, and my mum would have one of her friends who lived in the same apartment complex as ours watch my brother and I until someone from my family would get out of work or school to come and pick us up. One day we all decided to go to the pool as it was nice and warm. So we got our stuff and headed to the pool, which conveniently our sitter's apartment was located right next to. Now I was the kid who couldn't swim, but really wanted to go in the deep end. So what I would do is grab on to the ledges of the pool with both hands to keep myself up and go around the perimeter as such. I would do this every time I was in the big pool, and our sitter was in a deep conversation with her neighbour, and the kids were in the small hot tub pool, so there was no supervision on me whatsoever. As I reached the deep end, naturally the floor beneath me was no longer there. As I was still going around, I slipped in and started struggling under the water. All I could see whilst I was under was the sun, which we all know how it looks when looking from under the water. I was desperately trying to reach for the ledge to pull myself up, when I saw a very light silhouette shadow appear in front of the sun. I was able to clearly see that it was someone standing by the edge of the pool and blocking the sunlight. I suddenly felt very lightweight. I'm aware I was underwater, but this was a different feeling. It was almost as if someone was pulling me up by my arms and smoothly leading them to the ledge. As I finally gasped for air, I looked around to see who it was that pulled me up, but there was nobody. Nobody had seen what had happened, and everyone was as they were, still not paying attention and in deep conversation. I tried to make sense of what had happened. I told myself that I was able to grab the ledge in time and pull myself up, but as much as I tried to make sense of it, the thought of something saving me always makes more sense. I've never told this story to anyone, as I am not a good storyteller, plus I didn't feel like anyone would believe me. But looking back, I know something had saved me, and how scary that situation could have really been. I do believe in God, and always thought something in that divine area had something to do with it. Thanks to my mum and her 5 other siblings playing with Ouija boards as kids, I have many stories to tell, but I thought I'd start with this particular one, and I was somewhere between the ages of 8 and 10 years old when it happened. So little old me was just chilling out in my bedroom one nice spring day, gazing out my window at the sky, when all of a sudden my back started to burn. The sensation was getting worse and worse by the second. Completely confused, I went to my mum, who was in the kitchen doing her thing, and asked her to look and see what the hell was going on with my back. When she lifted my shirt up, she could see 3 bright red marks going vertically all the way down my back, literally from the top of my spine to the bottom, and the scratches were thick and bloody painful. My mum put some cream on the wounds, then the pain just stopped, just like that, instantly. What really shocked me though is that I would usually get a feeling in my gut when something paranormal was about to happen, and I would go to my mum, dad or sisters so I wasn't alone. But whatever this was so good at his job that I had no idea until it had already happened. I lived in an apartment with at least one ghost for around 14 years. I still don't know exactly what it was, but I'm fairly certain it wasn't my guardian angel, since I've a lot of experiences to share. The apartment was fairly small. A small entrance area, 1 bathroom, 1 kitchen, 1 living room and 1 bedroom, and a small hallway with a closet that connected the living room and the bedroom. My mother, sister and I lived there, and we all shared the 1 bedroom, but had our own beds. Most of these paranormal occurrences happened while I was home alone, because, well, why wouldn't they? I was 7 years old the first time I encountered it, and I still remember it like it was yesterday. I was up early for school at 6 a.m, got dressed, and decided to take a quick nap on the living room couch before I left. I laid there, my back facing out to the living room, and I fell asleep. I woke up and rolled over to face outwards towards the living room, sat up, stretched and yawned, then opened my eyes to look at the clock. 6:42 a.m. I then looked towards the doorway leading into the kitchen, and the entire world stopped for me. In the doorway was the silhouette of a man. He, or rather it, was as tall as the doorway, and was the deepest and most pure black I have ever seen. He stared at me with glowing red eyes, his gaze full of hate and malice. You may think being paralyzed with fear is just a horror trope, but it is a very real experience. I couldn't move or breathe. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I couldn't even form tears. I was staring into his eyes and him into mine, and we kept this gaze for what felt like hours, but in reality it must have been only a few seconds. I eventually managed to blink, and just like that he was gone. Every conceivable emotion after seeing that came flooding in all at once. I didn't know what that was, but I knew I needed to get out. Of course I had to run through that exact doorway to leave, but I sprinted through it, down the stairs and out of the building. I remember getting in trouble that day because I'd left my bag, and no one believed me when I told them what had happened. My family didn't believe me, and after a few more happenings they said to stop talking about it because it wasn't real. My next experience happened in 5th grade, so I was about 11 years old. This one happened in the bedroom. My bed was positioned so that you could see most of it while in the small hallway. Quite possibly the worst place for it to be, considering what happened. I woke up randomly in the middle of the night, and nothing felt particularly off, but I was pretty thirsty. I turned over and was about to get out of my bed to go get a glass of water, and guess who was standing in the hallway? I could still see his silhouette clearly, despite the entire house being pitch black. His red eyes glowed even brighter than before, and he was staring directly at me. I started breathing and sweating heavily. My chest felt tight and I couldn't make a sound. I remembered the other time I saw him, and I remember that he went away after I blinked. So, I blinked. But this time he didn't go away. He just got closer. He was halfway in the hallway before, but now he was in the doorway. I felt like I was going to throw up. I blinked again and he got closer, maybe 6 feet from me, staring at me the whole time. I blinked one more time and he was finally gone. I was relieved until I then began to hear footsteps. The house was old, so the floors creaked when anyone walked on it. I heard creaking from where he was, and I heard steps leading up to my bed. Each step paired with the creak of the floorboards. I couldn't take my eyes off of the floor. It reached the side of my bed and then stopped. One more step and he would have been right in front of my face. Something in my head was screaming at me to not look up or get out of bed. I still can't explain it, but I just knew something would happen if I made the wrong move. I decided to act like I didn't just see a shadow teleport across my room and ignored it. I kept my gaze down, rolled over, and hid under the covers. Needless to say, I didn't sleep that night, nor did I hear any more footsteps. For the last incident, this is the one that stuck with me the most. It happened the December after I'd graduated from high school in 2016. By this time I know I have ghosts in my house, and I kinda got used to their shenanigans. They still spooked me, but nothing too bad. I want to point out that there might have also been a little girl. I would sometimes smell rose perfume, and I thought I saw someone with pigtails out of the corner of my eye. For this one, I was in the kitchen getting ready to go to work. I put a little cup into the Keurig and went to sit at the table to eat my toast. I was watching Dashi on YouTube with an earbud in my left ear. That morning it was very windy, and the whole building swayed a bit with heavy gusts. The first 2 big gusts shook the house, as normal. The third is when it happened. The house shook as normal, and from the living room, clear as day, I heard a little girl scream. This wasn't some scream you'd hear when kids play. This girl was actually screaming bloody murder. It sounded almost exactly like it does in the movies. I stopped mid-bite of my toast and had tears rolling down my face. I wanted to get out of that house as quickly as I could, but I only had pants on. My clothes were in the room, so I had to walk through that living room twice. I gathered my thoughts and decided I'd briskly walk through with my phone in my face and headphones in, grab my clothes in my room and get out. After a quick pep talk and a string of obscenities, I went to the living room. As I walked through it, I saw someone sitting on the couch out of the corner of my eye. It took everything in me not to lose my cool or look out of curiosity. I got into the room and picked up whatever clothes my hand touched and walked swiftly back to get out. On my second trek through the living room, they moved from the couch to standing right by the side of the hallway entrance. I still had my phone right up to my face, but my peripheral vision saw their face looking right up at me. There is no language that could describe the feelings I had in that moment. They said something. I don't know what it said, but I ignored whatever it was and bolted, flying down the stairs. I changed outside and went to work. I stayed at a friend's house that week. Thankfully, we moved 2 years ago, and I haven't had anything like that happen in the new place. There was one thing, but most likely unrelated. As I said earlier, I have a lot more tales to tell, but these were definitely in the top 5. Anytime I would look into it, I got that being watched feeling, and stopped. I haven't had the urge to research it again since. I moved into a townhouse last year with a friend. My roommate and I work mostly nights, so we sleep during the day. Because of this, I'm used to hearing people moving around in the houses next to us. I should probably say that I sleep downstairs, and my roommate is upstairs, and we're both small women, so she doesn't make too much noise, and we don't have any pets. Now, thanks to the COVID I had, we got stuck at home. We had lived there at that time for a while, and gotten used to the normal house sounds, and now that we were up during the day, we got to hear the kids next door all the time. There was no school after all. Things got a bit weird though when I thought I'd heard someone moving around upstairs, when I knew my roommate was sat in the front room watching Netflix. Also, we'd heard someone in the front room when we weren't in there. We checked the attic in the garage and the small one upstairs, and there were no animals or people, as we really thought people could be an option. Too many horror movies, probably. One day, the next-door neighbour made a lot more noise than normal. I'd been watching some true crime for the past week, so I thought something bad had happened. It was daytime, so yeah, time to take out the trash and slowly walk by and snoop. There weren't any cars outside, but like us, they have a garage, so I assumed they had their cars in there. I couldn't see in through the windows, so I suck at being a detective. But at that moment I realised that I'd never seen my neighbours. Again, I work at night normally, so that's not too odd. When I went back inside, I thought I saw a kid run by in my front room. I screamed and cussed a bit, but chalked it up to being paranoid because of the next-door neighbour. My roommate wasn't home as she was out getting food, and whilst washing my hands, I heard someone giggling. I put it out of my head, and later on my roommate and I were chilling watching Netflix on the couch. Now we have a huge L-shaped couch, and she got up to get some snacks. As she was coming back in, she dropped them, and that's when I looked into the corner of the L couch and saw that there was a kid there, maybe 6. I don't know. It also looked like she was in a shadow, but we had all the lights on. I slowly got up and the girl got up and ran to the garage door. That area didn't have a light on, but she kind of just faded into the darkness. We've walked into the front room a few times before now, and have seen this little girl, but that's all she does. She just sits there, giggles, and runs into the garage. She pops up maybe once every week or so, and she scared us at first, but now we say hi when we see her. The next-door neighbours kept making noises, to the point where I had to call the property manager. At that time he told me we hadn't had a neighbour for about a month. The lock had been broken, so I don't know if we'd heard some people staying there illegally, or if it was connected. I'm sorry that this isn't scary, just wanted to get this off my chest. My ex loves reading stuff on Reddit, and told me about this. We still see the girl, but a lot of other people that come over don't. My ex came by and started crying when he came over. Not like sobbing, just tears. And he hasn't seen the girl, which is weird, because when we were together, he would see people that weren't there, and even see a dog that wasn't there either. I was in 5th grade at a small elementary school way out in the country. But over the years I'd been there. They'd been renovating the school, updating the floors, classrooms, equipment, etc. And so by the time I was in the 5th grade, the school was divided into 2 halves, what the students called the new part and the old part. My friend and I were eating at a table in the cafeteria with the rest of our class when I had to go to the bathroom, so I told my friend I'd be right back. At this period in my life, I had an aversion to anyone hearing me use the bathroom. I guess that's normal kid stuff. But I remember that was the distinct reason I checked under every stall in that restroom to make sure I was alone, and I never saw another pair of feet. This particular bathroom was really creepy, being in the old part of the school, and so the fluorescent lighting in there was dim anyway, but it sometimes flickered even though it never actually went all the way off, surprisingly. And the walls were old and crumbly, and there were random holes all over the place. It also had this weird, creepy, open-faced shower to the right of the door when you walked in. It just gave me a weird, eerie feeling every time I was in there. I was definitely trying to be quick. I could feel the hairs on my neck stand up, and my arms erupted in goosebumps. I picked a stall and was doing my business, when I heard a rhythmic bouncing sound, and as I watched the bottom of my stall, one of those cheap rubber balls you can find in nearly any 25-cent machine went bouncing by, and I felt my face go cold because it had originated from the wall, not from where the door was. And then following the ball, there were small, bloody footprints. As soon as the ball and the footprints passed by my stall, they disappeared. I sat there for a moment, too terrified to move, and I honestly considered calling someone to help. I was so petrified. But I figured I got bullied enough and didn't need that extra torment, so I gathered up the courage to open the stall door really quickly and get the hell out of there. I met my friend in the hallway and explained what had just happened, and she and I played Nancy Drew for a while, trying to uncover the mystery of what might have happened, but we never found out, and I never went into that bathroom again. I've been working at a funeral home for about a year as an assistant and will be starting my apprenticeship next month. I have had several weird encounters since working there, but nothing to write about, until tonight. I got back from picking up a decedent at around 8:30 p.m. I wheeled them into the prep room, and as I turned around to close the door behind me, I heard a man's voice. It either said, "I'm here," or "Come here." I wasn't too freaked out, as weird stuff happens a lot. However, this is the first time I have actually heard disembodied words.